Good morning and welcome to the Workforce Observer. Our guest today is Jessi Guenther. Jessi is Vice President Client Delivery at Allegis Global Solutions. She began her career at Allegis and today is on the AGS Executive Board and leads North American operations. In addition to her numerous business roles at AGS, Jessi is an advocate and spokesperson for women in leadership. I have enjoyed getting to know her. Welcome, Jessi.
Thanks, Subadhra. Great to see you.
It's lovely to see you too. I just realized it's been 25 years plus with Allegis, right?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not counting exactly, but I'm getting close to 30 actually.
Oh, wow.
Ages
Oh,
me,
that's
but
that's awesome. So, wow, what a journey. So, what do you think is going on? What is the state of the industry? And the reason I'm bringing this up is that, we're talking to a lot of people who I think the word dire has been dropped many times,
Mm.
So what are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm an optimist by nature, and it would take a lot for me to ever use the word dire. I don't think it's dire. I was actually on a call this morning, and I was saying I truly believe that 2025 is going to be a pretty good year. We're coming off of two very challenging years in our industry, and I think you've heard that from all of your industry connections, and it's just hard for me to believe that we would repeat a third year in a row of really tough. I don't think it's gonna be easy. I think we've got some headwinds for sure, some expected and some unexpected. Um, but I feel optimistic, maybe a bit cautiously optimistic, but I think based on the conversations I'm having with my clients for sure, some of the things we're doing to to plan for and adjust for some of the changing landscape, I think we're gonna be surprised with ourselves when we get to the end of this one.
So what's the biggest thing that you think is going to, if I say name two trends that you're seeing, because you use the word surprise, because you're thinking it's going to come back up, what trends would you point to?
Yeah. Well, from a trending standpoint, and there's a little bit about what are we seeing just in the market in general. Certainly AI, you can't walk into a room, into a conference, into a session, into a conversation without hearing about AI in some form or fashion. I think this year is a little bit of doubling down on what does that actually mean? Can we start to create definition? Can we agree on what it's defined for ourselves, for each individual? Service provider, certainly. What does it mean from a client perspective? I've got quite a few clients that want us to look at a cost save strategy so that they can use that save and invest it in AI. I love that idea in theory. So then that's at the top of the funnel. Now let's start to bring it down and define what does that actually mean? What do you, the client, want to get out of it? And every client looks at it a little bit differently. And it also depends on where they're coming from. We do business with some of the largest technology companies in the world. How they talk about AI and the things they want us spending our time on is very different than probably the mid-market, which I think, to back to your trend question, we're seeing some growth in the mid-market sector. We've got clients
Sorry,
that,
define the mid-market because it means so many things to
yeah,
different people,
fair.
right? Yeah.
Fair. In my context, we think about it in terms of how much money are these companies spending on external workforce or on their recruitment strategy, if it's FTEs. So, if from an external workforce perspective, it's usually that range of anywhere from $10 million a year, which is pretty small, to mid market in that sort of $40 to $50 million range.
And this is just recruitment spend, sort of, you're talking about, really. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's external workforce spend, or how much money are they spending on external providers to do all of their outsourced full-time recruitment.
Got it.
Um, so
Got it.
that's nearly half of the client portfolio that I'm responsible for. So it's a really big sector. And it's interesting because, like all things, you see cycles over
Right.
the years. And last year was a big year for the big, large spend companies, our huge technology companies. And we'll see that taper off this
Right.
year. And we're going to see, I think, the small to mid-sized companies hiring more than what the doomsday headlines would tell you.
What is the reason for that? The mid-market companies are seeing, and why are they, because what you're hearing in the media is like, oh my gosh, everyone's clinging to their jobs,
Right.
full-time workers, white-collar workers especially, because they
Yeah.
want stability, even though things may not be perfect. at the job. They may not be happy even, but they're just like, it's a wait and watch world. So,
Yeah.
how do you explain that with these smaller and mid-sized companies wanting to spend more on recruiting?
Well, I start with the data. I live in the data, and we are just seeing if it's not there's not a lot of retraction, and certainly there's more retraction with some of our the large companies that do when things are high, they're going to invest in particularly an external workforce or in hiring in general. They
Right,
tend to lead the way, and then they tend to be the first to start to retract. So
right,
um, the mids are either holding nice and steady or they are slowly hiring. So it's not a V-shaped recovery, but if you've got a large sort of volume of that small to mid-size, you start to aggregate it together and we do see a little bit of a swing. And that will offset to some degree some of the retraction that we're seeing with some of the larger employees where the headlines really sit right now.
So what are the clients looking for, the smaller and mid-size, in terms of what is their perspective? What kind of are you talking about like white collar jobs and what kind of talent are they looking for? And in turn, what does talent really want?
Mm. Well,
Because
yeah, from my lens, and
yes,
I come from probably a little bit of a different perspective because there isn't, we don't live in any specific industry or skill set.
yeah.
So, what kind of talent is all kind of talent? And I'm actually going to be on a podcast in a few weeks' time, very, very centered around light industrial, which is
Ah, okay.
in my world, in kind of workforce management in general, that's a scary place to be because technology is a little tougher when it comes to shift and you high turnover and you need a lot of agility in that space. And we've got a couple of customers that are doing some really cool things in the light industrial space. So we're going to talk about that in a few weeks. But again, the range of skills is all over the board from white collar professional to unskilled, um, and they all require different strategy.
Right, right, sure. Light industrial being different from white collar. Yeah. Okay, got that. So given the situation, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing the industry?
I think it's there's a couple of things. The cost savings is always going to be in the top three things that any client is trying to achieve in some form or fashion. It's just always a
Right,
matter of is it number one or is it number three.
right,
And in 2025, cost save is a really large topic of conversation connected
right,
to what you were just chatting about relative to AI. Certainly, right shoring, um, the strategy of where does the talent need to be? Where can we find more cost effective ways so that we can reinvest in some of the higher value areas? That's a
right.
big topic right now, both internally for our organization as well as for our clients and how can we marry up that strategy. You also don't walk into too many rooms where you're not hearing about big employers going the GCC route and finding ways to really cool ways, quite frankly, to utilize the subject matter expertise, the centers of excellence in other parts of the world where, quite frankly, the talent is just far more concentrated than it is here. So, we're definitely not just dipping our toe in it. We're putting our entire feet in the water and jumping in to say how can we be a part of this strategy? How can we help lock arms with these clients that want to look for new and innovative ways to get work done um, wherever they can get it done.
Right. I know Allegis has a big presence in India. I'm familiar with that. Does it have a presence like that anywhere else in the world?
We do. So, and I'll speak from the lens of Allegis Global Solutions, which is
Sure.
obviously one operating company of Allegis Group. Um, Allegis Group has massive presence all over the world, but Allegis Global Solutions, India is where we really kind of started our global delivery center strategy. That was geez, nearly 15, almost 20 years ago. We have since built out an equally sizable, very talented center in Manila. We have a big center in Budapest and then kind of northern UK that takes care of some of our UK specific clients.
Right.
We're doubling down. Bangalore, Manila, and Budapest. I think
Wow.
that and we're not alone in that realm
Yeah.
certainly, but, to your point, really established, phenomenal talent. I've actually got a trip to Manila planned, for a little bit later this year. I spent a ton of time in India, but I'm gonna be spending some time in Manila this year because for my business specifically, Manila has been a real boon for us and, in delivering talent to our clients.
Are you looking at anywhere in the US to, to kind of like make maybe not a center or but a place where you are like, okay, we're going to invest here, we're going to develop here, which is not the norm.
Yeah, we have invested already in our hub-based strategies. So I'm here in Hanover, Maryland, which is right outside of Baltimore. We've got a huge presence here. A lot of our corporate functions are here. Um, Troy, Michigan, Jacksonville, Florida, Seattle, Washington, and Phoenix, Arizona. We've invested heavily in those hubs, and then Mississauga in the Greater Toronto area. So we'll continue to invest. Whether we, to answer your question, look at additional US cities. That's more about, for me, I think that blend when it comes to remote work versus hybrid. We have a hybrid model. Half of our workforce is remote, half of them are in those hubs that I just mentioned. There are advantages and disadvantages to being remote and hubbed. So would we look at another hub that could create some community for additional staff? I'm open to that, but not on our roadmap, at least not this year.
And in terms of remote work, so hybrid is what, like 2 days in the office, 3 days remote, or it really
3, yeah, we
depends.
define it as 3, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And how's that working out at the headquarters? I'm saying headquarters because I think of Hanover,
Sure.
Maryland as the headquarters. How's that working
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, we hold everyone accountable to it, to answer your question, and, it was more challenging at first, and some of that is, there was a fear factor, coming out of it. Um, it's interesting as in the beginning, there's always resistance equals change equals resistance. So, there's always gonna be an element of that, and, we're now nearly 4 years into that journey, so, um, it's a, I would say, highly acceptable, model. Do we sometimes hear it come up when we're in, our office visits and things like that? Yes, it used to be the headline, now it's just a footnote, which I appreciate, and it's also sort of complemented, right, wrong, or indifferent by the fact that the big employers are going full 5 days a week mandated. Um, I think that 3 days a week, or that hybrid model, whether it's 3, 4, whatever it ends up being, works really well for us. It's not right for all, and, we reserve the right to get smarter as things evolve, so
Yeah, yeah. You learn as you go along. Yeah,
that's
definitely.
right.
No,
That's right.
that's good. So given the situation, given the current market conditions, what should staffing firms be doing, you know, um, uh, to stay afloat and then to grow as well?
Yeah, I have these conversations a lot. I have the privilege of being in a position where my team sees everything. They see every role that comes. They see every category, every client that's hiring, retracting, or new clients coming on board. And where I think some suppliers make the mistake early is attempting to be all. We have access from my lens to all roles, every skill set. I have yet to see a supplier that does well at all. And so when a supplier comes in and just wants a chance, which I fully understand, I've been there, and I have every vested interest to do what I can to give suppliers a chance. The chances improve when we get a little bit more specific about where the expertise, where the wheelhouse is, and I still am surprised by the number of conversations I have with suppliers that um, give me the landscape of their company, and it runs the gamut from A to Z. So specialization to some degree, where do you excel today? Is it where you want to excel tomorrow? And if not, what is the strategy? It's a simple thing, but that's always advice that I give um, to suppliers. I get the calls a lot, because of the role that I'm in, which I fully appreciate. And as a former supplier that, oftentimes was faced with not getting a call back, I try not to um, not respond. But I do need it to be connected to the business. My team gets solicited all the time. So my second piece of advice is AI does a lot of this work, but we can tell when it's AI. We can tell when it's a form letter, when there isn't some connection to what is it I can actually help you with. Um, I'm not exaggerating when I say I probably get somewhere in the realm of 100 emails a week, uh, and I can't answer all of them. So I answer the ones that have done a little bit of homework, understand what it is we do, it connects to that. And, relationships still matter. They matter a lot. I just said the other day, business relationships are still, at the end of the day, relationships.
Right.
And I do think that it's important, and sometimes the cultivation of connection, and some work that goes into that on the front end will pay off much better on the back if the ask isn't on the first day. So,
Yeah.
some simple things,
Yeah.
but impactful.
Hearing you, I realize sometimes things don't change. I mean, you have to, if you are approaching somebody or you're pitching someone, you have to have something that makes you stand out, regardless of AI. So
That's
I guess
right.
that still holds.
That's right.
I wanted to talk about this because I know you've done some very, lot of groundwork in this area, the MSP model.
Mhm.
Where is it at and where is it going? And the reason I'm asking this because I've been reporting on the industry for 2 decades now. And
Yeah.
one of the things when I started out was like, oh, MSP is, it's over. And this was 20 years ago. And this thing went along, did very well, made money, you know,
Mhm.
and continues, right? It's a model. So
Yep.
what do you think about it? What's your take on the MSP and also second part of where do you think it's going?
What I certainly think is the privilege of being have seen the MSP model evolve. I moved into the space from staffing in 2004, and not many people could spell MSP back then. Certainly, the supplier model, it wasn't friendly, first of all, and the supplier's strategy was to resist. The strategy was find a way to go around it, and you'll continue to thrive. And that worked for a little while. What I've seen from an evolutionary standpoint
Mhm.
over the last 20, odd years is and this is all MSPs, not just AGS. I think we're doing a great job of it, but the the supplier friendliness, the fact that no MSP program survives without the suppliers, and having a really great supplier strategy, and back to that relationship component, that component I think is still really key. And there's just far less supplier resistance. It is the way of working. There are still a lot of self-managed programs out there. I think there'll always be some element. There'll be cycles where programs come in and out of self versus
Yes.
outsourced, and that is okay. And I've gotten a front row seat to programs and repeat customers that have gone out and then in and then back out again, and vice versa. But I think that the biggest shift that we're starting to see is, external workforce used to be contractor. You were a contract employee or you were a full-time employee, and that was about it. There was a smattering of independent contractors, and whether they were actually independent contractors and could pass a tax test or not was, to be seen. And, some companies rolled the dice and said, we'll take the risk, and others, like Microsoft back in the day, implemented really stringent policies to avoid lawsuits. Now, external workforce is encompassing of this entire ecosystem of classification. Um, I think I heard it's like a 1 point something trillion dollar industry when you think about gig and IC and freelance. That's a shift. And then the services space. And, whether it's, you know, staffing with a bow, um, misclassified work, it actually doesn't matter. The way that clients are engaging talent now is starting to be more about what is the work that I need to get done, what's the best way to get that work done, and it could be some combination of FTE, traditional staff augmentation, a bundled piece of work, a freelance worker or something else. And
Sorry to interrupt, but it's
that's
still
okay.
done under the program.
Yeah, that's the shift that's happening in MSP is the clients are now, there was probably a moment in the middle where um, MSP only handled staff augmentation and then everything else happened outside. That is not the case anymore. Clients are coming to the market. They're not even doing it in phases. They're coming to the market upfront and saying, I want you to handle it all. I just need some help on what does that mean. The model and the process might look different. The technology inputs and outputs might be a little bit different. So can
Mhm.
you please help me design the whole thing? Our biggest investment at AGS has been on the technology side because we've had to respond to, okay, how do we plug in sometimes 4 or 5 or more systems so that the client feels a seamless experience and we make it connect in the back. So, we actually set up a whole technology center in India for that very reason, to help us solve those, um, quite frankly, really hairy but cool problems. And we're just going to see that continue to be, in my opinion, the evolution. The other thing we're seeing, Subhadra, and then I'll pause for breath, is far more customers open to putting it all, and by all I mean the entire talent strategy, if they outsource into one bucket. That's FTE hiring, that RPO model, the MSP model encompassing everything, direct sourcing, services. So that used to be we're not going to put all the eggs in one basket. There's too much risk to, okay, we see the benefit of that. So a lot more discussion happening, a couple of customers that have already done that. And I don't think we'll see that slowing down either.
So really, it's a shift. I mean, both from the client side as well as how the MSP has evolved. You know,
Absolutely.
we used to say MSP 3.0, or I used to say MSP 3.0, but now maybe it's MSP 4.0.
Yes,
The new world. Well,
I
that's
think
right.
so.
That's cool. Yeah. So it's going to continue to evolve and grow. And how, I guess, staffing companies use the MSP again is dependent on their strategy. Even if they are an MSP themselves, they've got to move with the market.
That's right. And we engage with competitors who are in the MSP space, but also staff, and for standalone staffing suppliers. And the biggest shift I've seen in kind of back to what we were talking about, if you go back 20 years and the resistance that suppliers um, had back then, what they're doing now, and the best suppliers, at least in the MSP world, have divested from sales and have set up pure play delivery models that are set up to supply to MSP. Those are the suppliers that are performing the best, quite frankly.
Can you just explain a little bit when you say divested from sales, and what do you mean? How do they do it then?
There is a large contingent of suppliers in the market
Okay.
today, and I think
Okay.
that number is just going to continue to grow, who have set up MSP specific delivery organizations that are just focused on some relations with the MSP
Got
itself,
it. Got it.
making sure that that connection is there,
Right.
but investing in the recruiter and delivery model. And I'm assuming, and I don't know this, intimately, but a team that would handle a lot of the administration that comes with performing in an MSP. There are technology inputs and things like that. And certainly automation has helped with some of that. But literally, the supplier has set up a team to just do that, rather than the old, which was assign salespeople to go sell to the MSP, salespeople who are also selling direct to the client. That's an expensive model.
Right.
Because those are higher wages and commissions and all of those things. So I've seen that shift for a number of years, and so now it's just more suppliers are going, okay, maybe I don't need to put or put salespeople into this particular account. Maybe I just need recruiters
Right.
and relationship managers. So
So satisfy the MSP and your sales grows. That's what
that's
you're
right.
saying. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's very cool. What's your take on procurement services?
My take is the firms that understand that it is different from traditional staffing, that understand that it isn't black and white. Procurement services, procurement solutions, SOW, it's called a million different things depending on who you talk to. It's comprised of a whole lot of things. What it isn't is I have a role. I need to fill that role to be managed and directed by the client with a timesheet that needs to be filled out and approved by the client. That is true staff augmentation or time and materials, but there could be some component of time and materials in a bundled service. It is the fastest growing product for us and has been now for the third year in a row. We've invested significantly in our procurement expertise um, and training and development of our teams to deliver it. It's a different skill set, managing the business, the end-to-end process. Our effects is different than open a rec and fill a rec. Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think we'll continue to see some great growth, and we'll, for as long as we see that, we'll continue to invest as well.
Cool. The industry has a poor reputation. Things have improved. What can we do more to change perception? Like some, suppliers stalking the hallways, and
Mhm.
there is a certain amount. As I write and report and things, I see people saying it kind of disdainfully, but the fact remains is that people need staffing. It's very core to their businesses. So what can we do on our ends? Both big companies, small companies, to mid-size to improve reputation, perception.
That's a complicated question and therefore probably a complicated answer. And I like to simplify. There's a couple of things that are really interesting. I started in recruiting back in the very beginning of 1997. I had no idea, like most people. I mean, I talked to my peers and people in the industry for years, and I wasn't alone in not knowing, okay, what does that actually mean? I just got a little lucky finding a company that was willing to invest in teaching me how, and
Right.
that I found over the years to be really culturally aligned and obviously have had an opportunity to grow my career. And I attribute a whole lot of stuff to that. But when I started, I had no idea what it was. There was no such thing as a degree in it. You couldn't go to school for it. And there was back then, and I'm sure that it maybe still exists a little bit, a little used car salesman to it. I remember being called a headhunter a lot, and that was always sort of frowned upon. Not that it wasn't a compliment. What's so different today is you literally can major in it. You can go to school for something that that'll be the case for a whole lot of careers 20 years from now, but in something that I couldn't have studied 30 years ago. So by that alone, I think there is a little bit of credibility that comes with it. It's rare to run into people in sort of conversation over dinner in a friend group that doesn't have some connection or understanding of what you're talking about. When I used to try to describe what I did, it was impossible, and now it's a lot easier. But in the end, Subhadra, in my opinion, we've got to have great people doing the work. And things like stalking the halls and the old school sales tactics that exists in all industries. And we're never going to get rid of that entirely, but I can kind of just look through the lens that I've had the privilege of looking through, at least through my more recent career, um, is we make sure from an AGS perspective that the suppliers we're engaging with um, are great companies that stand for focusing on putting great talent to work, on retention strategy, on the relationship that needs to exist sort of between the MSP or RPO or the provider, the client, and the talent. That their focus is on the talent, because I think that the first, it's just like having a bad meal. You have a bad meal, you tell 7 people. You have a good one, you might tell 1. Um, the talent is the first line, right, out in the market that's going to either perpetuate the reputation or help eat away at it. And if we're treating the talent with the respect they deserve, they're gonna have a lot, more positive things to say. So again, that's far simpler than the topic is, but
No, no, it's one way to approach it. Thank you
yeah,
for that.
yeah.
Really quickly, future of staffing. What do you see it as? Maybe it's a one-liner, maybe not.
Yeah, I think it's probably connected to a little bit of what we talked about. I think the automation and AI opportunity is scary to a lot of people, but I think that we can use it for good, a lot of good. I want my teams, if I think about it through my own personal lens, spending their time on the high value work And they're not doing that across the board. They spend a lot of their time in the minutia. And I do think that if we do it well, AI will solve for some of that. So I think there's going to be AI in the future of staffing. It's now, to be fair. But I'm looking forward to what that evolution looks like for sure.
Thank you. Advice, if any, you have for the industry, for people, suppliers, program managers, and maybe even the clients.
I am a relational leader. And I think I personally, and this probably sounds a little bit utopic, but leadership is the thing that's going to change the world. I firmly believe that. And leadership and relationships are intertwined. From a client standpoint, from a supplier standpoint, I just think that investing in relationships is the thing that, I mean, we're going to be happier, number one. And we spend a lot of time at work. So if we spend our time investing in relationships, whether it's the client, I hate the word vendor. I don't like using it with my supplier community. I don't like it when my clients use it with me. So I don't know if that's advice, but if we could all just start to think about it in terms of let's get to know opportunity, pain, you got a problem and we got to solve it or not. And we understand that. But if we can build a little bit of understanding in the middle, we're going to enjoy ourselves a little bit more and we're probably still going to solve it. So
Well, thank you so much, Jessie. I really enjoyed that conversation. And I hope to be back as a guest on the show. Thank
would
you.
love to. Great to see you
Thank you.
again, Subadra. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.